Yep. Okay, well, you know, we cover statistics quite a bit in our editorial coverage in Quality Digest Daily and on our website. And we have several notable authors who write for us. Don Wheeler, Dr. Don Wheeler comes to mind, for instance. But we don't talk about statistics much on this show because, well, because we don't want to look like idiots.
Two out of two hosts of Quality Digest Live don't know enough about statistics.
That's right.
That's 100%.
Fortunately, we know people who are smarter than us, which is
almost
probably
everybody.
The majority of our audience. Yeah. Okay. Well, today we are joined by Steve Daum, Director of Development for PQ Systems and author of the article 5 Costly Mistakes Applying SPC, which discusses some of the common errors people make when using SPC. So Steve is joining us today via Skype. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Dirk. Hello, Mike.
Hey, that was a nice article, by the way. Even Mike and I understood it, so
yeah,
good stuff. Well, and one thing that jumped out at me was something that one of our authors, I mentioned him earlier, Don Wheeler, often rants about, and that is that people often try to calculate things like, let's say, CPK and other metrics before they have a stable process, Can you talk a little bit about that? What is the problem there that he's referring to, and you alluded to in your article as well?
Sure. Thanks, Dirk. Well, CPK is an important metric in conversations between suppliers and customers. So it can become a key metric when talking about quality levels. And because of this, it can take on an elevated importance for a supplier wanting to meet the needs of their customers and keep them happy. However, CPK, or a capability analysis, it's just one tool of many in what Don Wheeler calls the SPC way of thinking. And part of that way of thinking is knowing that a process needs to be stable and predictable before you do a capability study or calculate CPK. So an employee who's not fully versed in this SPC way of thinking, and they may have the best of intentions, could respond to a customer by reporting capability before establishing that the process is in control. Another scenario where we've seen this come up relates to the use of these highly automated precision machines. The machines perform really well. And we've seen cases where one operator may monitor 6 or 8 machines in a bank of machines. Over time, confidence builds up that these machines always stay in control. And the problem is that they do, just up until they don't. And so in this case, it might seem reasonable to skip the control chart and the study of the process and the stability and just calculate the CPK because the machines run so well. This is an example where the SPC way of thinking, which is more along the lines of continuous improvement, can really help.
Well, Steve, one of the questions that we get asked a lot by readers is how many points do you need to start creating a control chart? You mentioned in your article that people often insist on waiting until they have enough data before they try to create a control chart. So what's wrong with that?
Well, there's not really anything wrong with it. It's just that some processes and some products don't really provide as many opportunities to measure as others. So think about some highly specialized piece that maybe is only produced once every few months. And next, think about the guidance you see in some of the SPC publications that say, you need 25 data points to get a reasonable control chart. Well, in some cases, that could take a long time. So the guidance here is that more data is always better, but sometimes less data can still provide benefits. A good analogy is exercise. At one point, I didn't do any exercise for years. Just walking around the block once in a while would have been better, although still not the ideal case. It's the same way with SPC. Practicing the way of thinking, the SPC way of thinking, even when you don't have enough data, is better than ignoring the data and waiting until you do. So, I think people just need to be a little bit flexible about these dogmatic rules about how much data you need before you can benefit from thinking about it and studying it and thinking about the variation.
Now, does that mean that you could have, I don't know, you could start off with 5 or 6 points of data and still get something from that?
Well, if the data are in a time series and they're from the same process, there is benefit to looking at fewer points. You know, obviously, a control chart with one data point on it is not going to be very interesting or provide much insight. But once you get 5 or 6 data points, you can start to pay attention to the variation, the mean, and how much spread you're starting to see. Now, you want to be careful about the conclusions you draw, but you don't just want to set the metric aside and not look at it during that time.
Because you could be missing out on some useful information that you could get in the short term, even if you don't have enough data then. Yeah. You know, your company, PQ Systems, is obviously a software company that sells SPC software, right? So one complaint that we often hear from statisticians is that too many people just take some data, like we're just talking about, they just take that data and they plug those numbers into their SPC software and it spits out a chart and okay, everything's under control. Easy, right? Are they right?
Well, there's more to it than that. And let me give you a story. I went up and interviewed a supplier quality engineer at one of the big automotive firms. And one of my questions to him was, what do you look for on a typical visit when you audit one of the suppliers? And he said that, well, generally he keeps an eye out for suppliers who are faking it. And I said, well, what do you mean and how do you tell? And he said, well, some things just look too good to be true. And he also mentioned that some suppliers are masters at checking all the boxes. We have our quality improvement manual. We've trained all of our employees. We've all been to SPC classes, check, check, check. So they've checked all the boxes. But something our founder, Dr. Mike Cleary, was fond of saying is that change is really hard work. And if you take the continuous improvement mindset, which is part of this SPC way of thinking, we're always involved in change. So it follows that we're always involved in hard work. And so what this auditor was basically saying was that you can kind of tell if people are really engaged in changing things and trying to make improvements versus just trying to check the boxes off that will help them get through, you know, the next month's worth of production. So whether it's using SPC or doing appropriate training, you know, continuous improvement is hard. And using SPC software alone is not going to solve the problem. It's also not going to improve your quality. Things like understanding variation and understanding the continuous improvement mindset, and then creating a team that's willing to work hard on these over the long run. Those are kind of the things that we look for on firms that are really making an effort and really seeing gains in quality improvement over time.
Okay, well, thanks Steve, for that and for joining us this morning. And also, Steve is going to be presenting a webinar with us next week titled 5 Costly Mistakes to Avoid When Applying SPC. The webinar happens on Thursday, June 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, and you can register via the link in Steve's article. There's also a link underneath the player page. You should see it down there. Or just keep an eye on your email inbox for further details coming up early next week. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you both.
All right, see you next week.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, we'll see you on Thursday.